today is really about introducing people to coaching and mentoring. It's really targeted at middle managers. I want to just say a little bit of stuff about me personally. I'm a qualified coach. From my perspective, coaching has really made a massive difference to me. It's made me much more self-aware. It's really helped with my inability to stop talking and giving advice. So really transformed my management style and my leadership style. But what I would say is I'm still a work in progress, and I continue to have to check myself all the time around my advice monster, and I'm always trying to say, why am I talking? So to allow other people to talk. So Pam's going to cover a lot of that in her slides going forward. So yeah, so I'm really looking forward to this session. We've been developing this session over the last 6 months or so. We've got some great presenters and speakers today, so I really hope you enjoyed the session. I'm just going to bring a couple of colleagues in who are going to be presenting today to introduce themselves and their background. So first of all, Shirley, can I bring you in and you say a little bit about yourself and why you're here?
Hi everyone, I'm Shirley Gaston, the founding director of Azesta, which is an experiential learning company. We provide practical training and qualifications in coaching. That's why I'm here. So we do apprenticeships, we do coaching professional level 5, and we do ILM qualifications at levels 3, 5 and 7. So I spend an awful lot of my time teaching people how to be coaches. And actually, Helen, that you've just been hearing from, did a level 5 coaching professional with our organisation. So that's the connection.
Thanks, Shirley. And it was great. Highly recommend it as well. Had a great time, learnt loads. Pam, can I bring you in?
Yeah, thank you. So hello, everybody. Lovely to be here. My name's Pam Weeden. I'm Director of Coaching, Curriculum and Apprenticeships for the Academy of Leadership and Management. So similar to Shirley, we deliver ILM and CMI qualifications in coaching and the coaching professional apprenticeship. And we develop a CPD community of practice around coaching with one of our partners, which is exciting. But most of my work is around delivering those apprenticeships, but also heading up the team that also deliver on those. So I'm really grateful to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Thanks, Pam. Kev, can I bring you in?
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Helen. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevan Collier. I am the Strategic Lead for Learning and Organisational Development at Northwest Employers. I am a behavioural and social scientist by education and training, and worked in academia within those fields for a number of years before coming into local government around about 8 years ago now. I'm also a qualified coach, HR professional and OD practitioner, and really look at how I can use those behavioural, evidence and social-based principles through my early career in HR and OD now. So it's great to be with you this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Kev. And I've got two colleagues from two councils. So Therese, can I bring you in?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Therese Hynes, and I am the lead for coaching at Cheshire East Council. I started my coaching journey about 10 years ago, and I think I've not stopped learning about coaching ever since. And I think for me, it's about continually looking for fun and creative activities related to coaching. Thank you.
Thanks. Julie?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Green, and I'm the lead for coaching in Stockport Council. And when I was thinking back that when did I qualify, to my horror, I realised it was in 2008. So yeah, so that's what and I'll talk about, that's, how long we've been offering coaching within Stockport. So great to be here as well. Thank you for the invite.
Thanks, Julie. So hopefully we're going to have a really great session today, and obviously we're going to have an opportunity to practice some great conversations and coaching practice as well, which is great. got to mention just in the chat, if you could just say who you are and what organisation you're from and your role as well. That helps with stuff, because we don't do enough of that really, of introducing ourselves. That'd be great if you could do that in the chat. So if we just get on, can I just go back to the agenda? So I suppose what we're trying to do and cover in this session really is around defining what coaching and mentoring is and the models that are available to people. We want to really promote coaching and mentoring in the workplace, and this session is aimed at middle managers, but it's really, it could be for anybody. I mean, it's anything that we do today, it could impact on your personal life as well. So obviously what we're trying to promote is having really great conversations with people. And then there is this bit that we want to look at how we embed a culture of coaching and mentoring within organisations as well. So that's what we're trying to get out of this session. So just conscious of time, I'm a little bit ahead of things, so that's great, because Shirley talks quite a lot. So so I'm going to have to keep Shirley to time, but Shirley's session is going to be around silent coaching, Shirley. So can I hand the floor over to you?
Thank you, Helen. Yeah, I'm not actually going to be talking that much in this section. It's later on when it could be a problem, because what I am going to seek to do with a couple of hundred people is, it's called silent coaching, but I guess silent for you. You know, normally if you were a coachee in a session, you would be doing most of the talking. But as there's one coach, me, and a couple of hundred of you, then you are unfortunately going to be silent. But the aim is to give everybody a little taster of an experience of what it's like to be coached. And for this, we need you to do two things. We need you to make sure you've got, oh, you can't see that, there we go, a pen and a piece of paper, so that you are able to jot down your thinking and ideas in response to about 20 questions that I'm going to ask you. So for that to work, the first thing that you really need to do is to think about an area of your work or of your life, it doesn't matter, that you want to change, and write it down at the top of your paper. So this needs to be something that you genuinely want to move forward and take action on, you know. So it could be anything, you know, maybe you want to get healthier, maybe you want to get a promotion, maybe you want to manage your time better in your job. I don't mind, but we need to think about something that you genuinely want to move forward and jot it down on your paper. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You don't need to write the question down, but what you do need to do is write down your response to that question. And it's going to be quite unusual, isn't it? Because I'm going to have no idea what you're thinking about, and I don't know what topic you're working on at all. So some of the questions that I ask you might not fit perfectly with your specific scenario, but that's okay. I just want you to go with the flow and jot down as best as you can your response to my question. Now, if I was doing this with a small group, I'd be saying, no chronic doodling, you know, jot down your answer and then look up so I can see that you've looked up and you're ready for the next question. But in this case, couple of hundred people, I think I'm just going to have to go with my best guess of how long it takes you. So I'll jot down in between each question, and apologies if you needed more time or less time, you might have to just adapt a little bit. So getting ready. Hope you've all got your pens and papers ready. Do run away and get one if you haven't. We're going to start with the first question. So hopefully you have written down in a phrase or sentence already so far the issue you wish to think about, or the area of your life or work that you want to change. And the first official question, number one, is, what are you aiming to achieve? Please jot down your answer. And question 2, very linked. Imagine that you have successfully addressed your issue. What does success look like? Question 3, what does success feel like? And question 4, what do you really, really want? And then, for reasons that will become clear later in part 2 of my session, I'd like you now to just draw a line across your notes where you've got to so far, as we are going into section 2. And question number 5 is, what is going on at the moment that makes this an issue for you? Question 6, who is involved? Question 7, what assumptions are you making? Question 8. What, if anything, have you done so far to address the situation? Question 9. What has been the impact of what you've done so far? Okay, please draw a line across your page under your notes as we go into section 3. So, question 10. This is a hard one. What options do you have? And I want quantity rather than quality here, so as many ideas as possible for options that you might take to move you forward towards your objective. Question 11. What else might you do? If you thought you'd run out of ideas, you've got to come up with at least one more. What else might you do? And question 12. If you had absolutely no constraints of time, of money, power, or health, what would you do? And question 13. If you had a really wise friend, what would they do in your shoes?
Just time checking you, Shirley. I knew this would happen.
I'm doing my best. Right, please draw a line across the paper. We're into the final section. So, question 14. From your list of options above, in questions 10, 11, 12, 13, which options will you actually pursue? Choose one or two. You might just want to underline them or asterisk them. And then link to that 15 for each of your chosen options. What specifically will you do? Jot that down. Question 16. What help or support will you need? Penultimate question, Helen. What deadlines will you set for yourself?
Will it be keeping to time, Shirley, do you think, for you?
That is not what my thinking is about, no. What deadlines will you set for yourself? And finally, question 18. What is the first step you will take? Okay, I want to give people enough time to write that down, but we need to move on, don't we, Helen? But before we do, I would at least like to ask you all to put into the chat just a few notes about what was the effect, the impact on you of me making you think about an issue or challenge that you wanted to move forward and jot things down for the last 15 minutes. What was the impact or the effect of doing that? Obviously not as powerful as real coaching.
Oh, I don't know,
I can listen to you.
I tell you what, I was doing all that exercise, and I learned so much more about myself when I was doing it again. So always great to practice, isn't it, this stuff? But yeah, no, and I had a bit of a eureka moment on something there as well. So maybe we'll pick up in a supervision session at some point, Shirley. That was brilliant. That was really, really great. I can't even go through all the comments that are happening in the chat. Maybe we'll pick some of that up at the end because I am conscious of time. We have gone over a little bit, but thanks so much. And we will circle round again for your second part a little bit later on. But I'm going to bring Pam in now.
Okay, Brilliant,
Hi,
thank
Pam.
you. Hello. I'm just bringing the slides up here. Can you all see those?
You might want to do it on slideshow, Pam, if you can, make it a little bit
I
bigger.
am. I'm just
All
getting
right,
rid of
okay.
this bar at the top here so I can see it. There we go. Right, so let's move past that one. So thank you, Shirley. That was excellent. Really enjoyed it. And like Helen, I did it in the, I was working on it as well. And like Helen, some things have really come clear for me on something I was struggling with. So thank you very much. Right, so I'm going to give an introduction to coaching and mentoring. So just going to have a look at what coaching is and what it isn't, and how it's distinct to mentoring, and also what they have in common, those two disciplines, and also how you might use some of those coaching style techniques in your conversations that you have in the workplace. So let's start by having a look at what the key theorists say coaching is. So let's look at Miles Downey. It's that facilitation of performance and learning and development of another person. And while Timothy Galway looks at it as unlocking somebody's potential to maximize their own performance. John Whitmore, he's probably one of the most key figures. And when we go into Shirley's later session, where she's looking at the GROW model, John Whitmore's a key figure in there. He talks about building awareness and responsibility and self-belief through that conversation medium. And Zeus and Skiffington, quite key figures in solutions-focused coaching, talk about it being a conversation or a dialogue. And the interaction there produces that dynamic exchange that gets people to think about the goals, how they're going to achieve them, and how that's going to help somebody move forward to achieve the success that they're envisioning for themselves. So it's all about what a person's ideas for a future looks like, what the potential of that person is. So a way to think about coaching, if we were to think about it in a more simple term, is coaching is the idea that somebody's got within them a huge amount of potential, resourcefulness, knowledge, skill, and expertise that they've gathered through their personal and professional journey. But sometimes it's all tangled up within them, and it's not clear how that person can apply that or use that in order to move forward to some kind of preferred future or vision of success or solution to a problem where they find themselves. And through that conversation, a really effective coach uses questioning, listening, and skills like managing silence in a really effective way to draw out of that person their understanding of how they can use all that resourcefulness to move forward. So a bit like if you picture all that resourcefulness as tangled up string, and the coach gradually draws it out and untangles it all so somebody can do something with it. So another way of thinking about it is thinking of coaching as any purposeful conversation. And it's the conversation that helps a person think about what it is that they want to achieve and how they're going to get there. So what is the preferred future or sense of success that they have, and what is that journey from getting to where they are now to achieving that? The really good acronym that I find really, really helpful is WAIT. Why am I talking? So what's the purpose of this conversation that I'm about to have with somebody? And what do we need to get out of it? What does the person need to get out of it? What's that vision of success that they need to achieve? And what does success look like for both of us? Because sometimes there may be something inside that conversation that you both need to achieve. What will it need for both of us for me to stay curious and explore rather than rush to provide guidance or assistance? And what questions might I need to ask so I can explore a situation with somebody and take it to greater depth? It's also helpful to think about coaching conversations as a craft skill. So just like any artist will keep practicing and looking and reflecting, coaching conversations are a bit like that. So the more you think about the conversations that you're having and reflect on them and think about when something happened, or there was a shift, or there was somebody moved forward, what was it that I did? What was it that I asked that helped that shift to happen? Or what was it that I brought to a conversation that allowed somebody to see something differently and capturing that, so you get a sense of what you can replicate in another conversation, and you slowly build up a sense of who you are, what skills, knowledge and understanding you have that you can bring to those coaching conversations that you have. So the other positive thing about coaching conversations, and if you think about that silent coaching that Shirley's just taken us through, it's all focused on solutions. If we talk about problems, we tend to become experts in the problems. If we focus on solutions and what the solution could look like, then we tend to become experts in the solutions, and there's a much more positive energy around that, and it's progressive. So they're constructive conversations that focus on solutions and how we can get to those solutions. So there's a lot of myths around coaching sometimes. Sometimes people perceive it as a remedial development tool. It's for the weak and the feeble. It's for people who've got skills gaps sometimes, or people who are not performing at their best, but it's not that. Coaching is a really positive development tool, and it's about promoting talent. It's about people who want to really progress and move forward. So it can address skills or knowledge gaps, so to help people make really positive progress in a particular area of work or towards a goal. So I got a coach when I became a director for my organisation. I've been a head teacher, but the corporate leadership was something that was quite new to me. So he's been really, really helpful in that challenge and conversation, really helping me know how to develop those corporate skills that were missing in my skill set. So it can promote reflection. So where have you been successful elsewhere? Where have you managed challenge? Where have you dealt with situations? How did you do that? What led to success? What can you take away from the previous successes and challenges and problems that you've worked through? And where can you bring your understanding of what worked there and apply it to the situations that you're finding yourself in now, and reach some conclusions about what's replicatable? It's also really powerful for opening up blind spots. We all have them. They're about things that maybe not helpful about our behaviours, and it's really good for opening up things that are real strengths for us, but we're not aware of them. As soon as somebody opens up our blind spots, then the tool of coaching can help us understand with much greater depth some of those behaviours that are perhaps not in our conscious understanding. Then we can start to take some responsibility for them and start to work on things about ourselves we may want to improve, or we may want to harness some of those strengths that we're not making the most of. And it enables things to be seen from different points of view and perspectives. It's a bit like you're all in the dance floor sometimes and you're all entangled up in situations, but really powerful coaching can take you right out of that and put you on the gallery so you can see everything from a different point of view and really understand how maybe other people are feeling and thinking, and help to move things forward. And coaching really helps people to formulate a vision for a future and what they really want that to look like. So what's the very best that this could be? And if it's a 10 out of 10, can you define that? And then thinking about what's the actions to get from where you are on the scale. So that's 10 out of 10. Where are you now? And what you're going to do to help you make that progress from where you are on the scale now to where you're going, to what that 10 out of 10 looks like for you. And as Shirley was demonstrating, what's those small steps that you might make a start with? So it's not consultancy, because that is giving advice. It's not counselling, because that's a therapeutic, past-focused, unhooking people from trauma and helping them to resolve that. And it's not training, because that is about helping people to develop and secure new skills and knowledge. So I'm moving on to mentoring shortly, and I'll define that. But just remember, it's not remedial, it's powerful, and it's about talent. So let's look at the coaching continuum and where the skills here on mentoring and coaching lies. The coaching is right up here. It's about pulling out of people their own resourcefulness and helping them to understand how they can use it. So it involves a lot of listening, to understand rather than listening to respond. So what I'm hearing from you is, and what I'm understanding from you is, involves asking questions, lots of different types of questions to clarify, questions to dig a bit deeper, questions to explore and be curious, lots of paraphrasing and summarizing. And those are the skills that a coach will really draw on to help explore, understand, help a person explore and understand their resourcefulness and lay it all out so the person can work with it and understand it. Now, mentoring is something a little different. Mentoring is about, if we take Julie Starr's definition, understanding what the best form of assistance is needed to best empower a mentee. Now, that can be very diverse. The really good mentors will put their own ego to one side and think, what's best needed here to support this mentee in moving forward? So unlike a coach who doesn't need to be a subject matter expert in the same field of their clients, because it's all about drawing out the client's own experiences, a mentor will need to have some expertise or experience or understanding in the field of the person that they're working with. And they need to make some judgment calls about how am I going to best support this person to move forward. So it could be offering advice, which we see here, or it could be providing some guidance. It could be that sometimes there may be an element of instructing at that level there. Sometimes it might be listening to a mentee provide a range of their ideas and thinking and giving some feedback from that expert perspective and the voice of experience. Sometimes it's about questioning and listening to help draw out of the mentee where they are thinking. So the mentor will be using a lot of these skills here, and some of them will cross over into the coaching. But sometimes the mentor is more at this end of the spectrum. So we see that there's a lot of the skills here that a mentor will use. So let's just look at this a little bit more about how mentors will best guide and support. So mentors will share experiences. Really good and honest mentors will also share their failures as much as their successes, because it's all about supporting the development of the mentee. And like I say, leaving the ego behind. A really good mentor, the way I see it, is shelve your shiny cape, because that's not what's needed. It's about helping your mentee discover their own path of progress. Teach through stories, anecdotes, offer insights that have come through experience. It's role modeling of behavior, because the mentor relationship sometimes is what's happening in those conversations, and also that observation that comes in the wider sphere. Advice, so giving advice and the right answer. When I was a new head teacher and I had a mentor, I had a member of staff who was accused of hitting a child that needed to go to the ladder and all that process. And I needed my mentor in that moment to help me just think through, am I following the right process here? I just want to get it right, because obviously there's the process, and then there's all the emotion that goes around it, the parent's emotion, the member of staff's emotion, and so on, which the process doesn't always tell you will be there. And then supporting people, offering reassurance, and helping people build networks. And really good mentors will also know when they've gone as far as they can, and when it's time to help somebody else build a relationship with somebody who can take them further still. So how do you know what you need to do with the person that you have with you in those conversations that you're having in the workplace? Do you need to be mentoring? Do you need to be coaching? What kind of conversation is needed here? So it's thinking about, how do you need to turn up? So one of the most powerful questions that you can ask is, what's on your mind? Think about it as the Facebook question, because there was a period of time when Facebook asked that question all the time. What's on your mind? It's a really invitational question. It's non-judgmental, but it's focused, and it invites that reflection from somebody on what's needed. And through that, you can gain a sense of whether you need to be exploring. So you need to be asking questions, listening, digging deeper, and in that curious space of more at the coaching end of the spectrum, or do you need to be more at the offering and sharing some knowledge and support and thinking about the answer to that question? How do I best support and offer advice to move this person forward? It's about thinking about what's needed, and maybe sometimes in one conversation you may do an element of both of this. So you might be a lot of exploring, but think about when someone's got a bit stuck, where you can offer just a little bit of support or guidance and trigger the release of more resourcefulness and help someone think, oh yeah, of course, I did this, or I've got this experience that I can use. So think about what's the answer to that question, what's on your mind, and think about what that opens up in terms of the discussion. Powerful exploratory questions. Think about that answer to the question, why am I talking? What does success look like for the person? What is it they need to get out of that conversation with you? And think about using the answers to that to help you think about the next questions you need to be asking. Listening is really powerful, and it's a fundamental skill. And there are various levels of listening when you're in a conversation with somebody. There's always a cognitive story. What are the facts, the data, the information that the person is giving you? That's one level of listening. There's often an emotional story. What are the feelings that are present in this conversation? The feelings of the person that's talking to you? What are the feelings of other people that has been brought into this conversation? How are they describing the emotions of others? Think about the behavioral story you're listening to. What assumptions are present? What's the client or the person you're talking to assuming? Shirley demonstrated that in the assignment coaching. She asked us, what might we be assuming? So what might the person be assuming? What are they assuming about other people that you're picking up on? And then finally, think about the untold story. What are you not hearing? What are you aware of that you're curious about, but it's not been spoken of? And how might you explore and ask questions about that to help you understand more, rather than move past it and leave it as unexplored? There's also something very powerful about holding silence. And silence can feel uncomfortable, and there'll be an urge that we want to fill it. But it's allowing that space, because it's valuable thinking space where reflection is happening and ideas are forming. So know what it means to allow that to be present. And what you can think about, again, is the acronym WAIT. Why am I talking? What's the question that I want to rush in and ask here? And is it the best question that I need to be asking? And if I just step back and I think about it a little bit more, what's a better question that I might want to ask? Our emotional brain is sometimes a little bit quicker to speak than our logical brain. So just stop, and when there's silence, just stop and think, why am I talking? What is it I want to ask? What do I want to rush in and do? If I just stop and pause and stand back, what's the better question that I might ask here that's more curious, more exploratory, and just stays in that curious space? Empathy is powerful. Empathy is listening to understand and feeding back that understanding. So what I'm hearing from you is, it's very powerful. It's when all of our conversations in the workplace in the main are because someone needs something from us. But when you speak, when you hold a space for somebody and you have no judgment present in that space, and you listen and you understand and you express to somebody, I've listened to you and I've heard you, and this is what I've understood. It's very triggering. It can, what it says to a person is, I've just held you for this moment, and there's nothing I expect of you other than my value on you, and I'm holding you in unconditional positive regard. And that is, it's sometimes it really opens up the floodgates to a person moving forward in a way that they can feel quite stuck elsewhere. And sometimes you might just need to think about, if you do need to share, if you do need to offer, what's the best kind of knowledge and assistance that you do need to share? What does that need to look like? So why is coaching transformational? Why would you bother? Why would people need to even think about bringing coaching conversations into their workplace? So it is raising awareness. It helps people understand for themselves what it is that they can do and what it is that they can bring to the changes that need to happen. So rather than be told this is what you need to do, if a person understands it for themselves, then they own that, and that's far more empowering. If a person has formulated their own vision for the change that they want, for the vision of the future that they want to work towards, be that an answer to a problem, be that a challenge for a team that they're working with, be that a longer term goal that they're aspiring to, if that's a vision they formed and they own, then the will to succeed there is very powerful. It's this bit here, energetic essence. What that actually means is a person will have the energy and want to put the effort into achieving their own talent and potential. So self-actualizing for themselves. They've got the enthusiasm, they've got the motivation. And it helps to trigger an understanding of those beliefs that are held deep down in the subconscious that are unhelpful, and they drive some of those unhelpful and self-defeating behaviors and blind spots. If you can bring those out and to the conscious awareness, then you can work on challenging them and putting more empowering beliefs in the subconscious instead. And a good coach will help open up that awareness and help a person develop a more empowered set of beliefs that they can work to developing and embedding in for themselves instead. And then finally, if a person is motivated and that motivation is coming deep from within, then often nothing will stand in the way of them driving forward. If the motivation is coming from extrinsic factors, then change doesn't stick with as much energy. And I think about my own son sometimes. When he was 16, he was really overweight, bad eating habits, and nothing we could say would encourage him at all. Then he suddenly decided he was going to take up boxing and he was going to get mega fit. Well, he made that choice. We bought him a gym membership for Christmas for 6 months, but the rest of it was down to him. He's 22 now. He looks like Adonis. He doesn't touch alcohol. He eats really clean, and he is the most devoted specimen to well-being and fitness and he's never wavered over these 6 years. And that's because the motivation is intrinsic rather than extrinsic. So this is what the power of coaching conversations can achieve. So that's what I would say when you think about why bother. These are the outcomes that are possible. There is capital C coaching that you might contract with a person and you agree a number of sessions and a number of outcomes, but coaching style conversations are possible in a various different ways in those one-to-one conversations that you have in the workplace. You can bring a coaching style into your one-to-ones. You can bring a coaching style into your team meetings, and you can achieve some of those possibilities that we've touched on in this discussion now. So that's everything from me. Thank you. If I hand back to you, Helen.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. Really challenging, isn't it, to do in 20 minutes justice to coaching and mentoring and explain it, and you did that brilliantly. So thanks so much for your input there. We are a little bit behind though, so I'm going to ask Kev to go into his section next. So Kev, can we hand the floor to you?
You certainly can. Let me just bring up my slides. Sorry, can everyone see my slides?
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
So
Right.
thank you very much to Pam and Shirley for setting the scene, defining what coaching and mentoring is and isn't. I thought it'd be really useful to spend some time talking about some of the key psychological principles that are happening underneath the surface when we talk about coaching. There's a lot of literature out there looking at the concepts of coaching, looking at models and the benefits of coaching, but there's less in the way of actually what are the core behaviors, principles, psychology that's going on underneath the surface. So it'd be great to spend some time looking at that, because raising our awareness of that gives us a greater appreciation of what is actually happening underneath the surface, how complex some of these behaviors can be, and how we need to appreciate that it does take consistency over time to see real change and real effort. But obviously with that, when we are committed as a coach, but also when our clients are committed, we can see real change, as we've discussed. So I'll really start by giving an understanding on what those key principles are and how we can, again, use them to further benefit our coaching practice. Again, we've got 20 minutes, so it will be a scratching of the surface of these psychological principles. And I have made some notes just so that I get all the key pieces across within this time. But ultimately, what we will really do is start to look at what are those key sort of psychology principles that are sort of built in around coaching, but also in the way our behaviors develop and form over time. And we really start to look then at how these manifest in the workplace. So when our behaviors and our sort of views develop, how does that translate into what we see in the workplace? And again, how can coaching really help us to address that? So if we start by looking at developmental psychology and the principles around developmental psychology, it really looks at how our behaviors, our beliefs, our identity and our view of the world really develop over a lifetime, starting in childhood. And there's a very complex interrelationship between our physiology, our genes, the social environment we are brought up in, our community, and the messages that we get through those different exposures. And as we develop and grow, we will really form a very strong sense of self, our identity, and a really strong worldview of our perception of what the world is, what that means to us, and what we need to do to sort of be safe and function within that world. We will have many biases as well within that, which often we don't always challenge because firstly, we're not always aware of them. And again, one of the key concepts of coaching is raising that awareness of our own beliefs, our biases, our assumptions and misassumptions, but also how they drive our behavior. So when we raise that awareness, we can do things differently. And our behavior is fluid over time and space. We will behave differently in different environments, depending on what we've learned will give us status or credibility within that environment, but also what we may need to do in order to navigate that environment in an effective way. So it's a very, very complex process of how our behaviors develop, how our beliefs develop, but also then on the basis of that, how that manifests then into the observable behaviors we see day to day and in the workplace. On a fundamental level, the brain drives us to seek reward, maximize pleasure, identify threat, and reduce risk. That's what our brain is driving us to do predominantly every day. And we have two key systems when we talk about the neurological processes that drive our behavior. It can be referred to as system 1 or system 2, or our fast or our slow system. Some people will refer to it as, again, our prefrontal cortex, so the part of the brain here at the front, or our limbic system, which is deep down in the brain, our very primitive behaviors. And on the basis of that, we learn very quickly what gives us reward. So the brain is exquisite at identifying patterns. It's a pattern recognition machine. And essentially, there will be a stimulus, a cue in the environment. We will pick up on that, and then we will realize, actually, if we perform a particular behavior in response to that, it will give us reward, for example. It'll help us to deter threats. It'll keep us safe. It will make other people give me a level of status and increase my sort of presence within that group or that community, or it'll help me achieve things. So we recognize those patterns, and what happens over time is those patterns get committed to, again, our sort of system one, that very fast, intuitive system, or our subconscious, and that becomes habitual. We do it without thinking, without functioning. Just like driving a car, we no longer consciously think of driving a car, we just do it and it becomes automatic. And it's the same with the countless other beliefs and behaviors that we have. So what we've got to be really aware of is how these behaviors really impact us. And one thing that coaching does, it is very much about working with people to help them become more self-aware of what is going on. So essentially taking all those behaviors, those beliefs that are in that automatic, very fast, intuitive thinking into the more conscious, slow, methodical, critical part of the brain, so we can be aware of that and challenge that more effectively. So again, we develop our core beliefs. So our core beliefs are very, beliefs that we hold very dear to us about ourselves, about the world, about our place within the world. And that belief will drive our behavior as well. And core beliefs that we may see are things like, I need to shout loud to be heard. So again, dependent on people's lived experience, the community that they've grown up in, the environment that they now find themselves in, there may be a belief that those who shout loudest get what they want. And that will manifest then in behavior. Those in charge can't be trusted. So again, a real distrust of those in authority. Look after yourself because others won't. So again, very much about being the individual and working alone and driving through and securing outcomes for ourselves. Don't give too much or more will be expected, or I'll never be able to achieve that. So again, a very defeatist attitude, as in, distance ourselves from something because we may have had a bad experience where we've tried, we've met some adversity, we've not overcome that. So again, people will fall into that attitude of don't try in the first place, because the pattern is I tried, I failed, I lost status, I was looked at in a bad way, so I'll distance myself from any kind of challenge. The problem with that then is we generally don't progress because we avoid challenging ourselves, we avoid situations, and that avoidance can become a learned behavior and become very subconscious and automatic in how we do things. So things we may see then in the workforce are apathy. So again, people who are very apathetic about trying things, really don't want to put in too much effort. We may also see perfectionism, where people are very sort of driven about small details and things have got to be a particular way before they're happy, before they will be content with what we've done. Always seeking to please others. So again, because people may have realized that actually by pleasing others, by giving others what they want, we get something back. We're safe in that environment. We are sort of seen as being favorable. Other people may distance themselves, so other people may really be reluctant to engage in social activities, to engage in teamwork, because their learned pattern may be that actually I don't really work well in groups. I've not been accepted. Maybe I'm a bit of an outsider, and I don't want to put myself in that position where I feel exposed. I feel sort of, vulnerable to those challenges. Some people may always compete. So again, we see these very aggressive, competitive behaviors because, again, we may have been reinforced with you've got to compete to get ahead. It's not about doing your best, it's about actually doing better than everyone else. So again, really building into then those sort of wider concepts of fixed and growth mindset, etc. Some people will have that habitual denial. So even when all the evidence is very, very clear that something is a particular way, they will convince themselves and try and convince others that that isn't the situation. We like to have a congruence between what we believe and what we see in the external environment. And when we don't get that congruence, we get that cognitive dissonance, it's very, very uncomfortable to us. And we will really try to address that balance again to give us that own sort of psychological safety within ourselves that actually it's right, because when our core identity and our core beliefs are challenged, and when evidence is presented about that, we almost double down on what we believe. And we see people really go into that rather than sort of look at it. And we see this in sort of groups as well. So groups will maybe put something in place, they'll try the new thing, and all the evidence is saying it's not working. But rather than actually accept that evidence and say, maybe we need to look at this again and do something different, they double down on trying to sort of make it work. And we do that as well as individuals. Again, people may be very passively aggressive. So again, don't really want to have those difficult conversations, don't want to challenge, but will use those avoidance behaviors in order to keep themselves, again, emotionally, psychologically safe. And we can probably all, identify individuals who we've worked with over time who will fall into these behaviors. And we can obviously all, affiliate and appreciate times when we've had to deal with these behaviors as well. So habits then in relation to sort of how they form, as we say, it's a very complex interrelationship between our physiology, our sociology, the environment, etc., and our core beliefs and how they get committed to subconscious. But Charles Duhigg talks a lot about these 3 points within the habit cycle that are really important to understand, and that is we have a cue. So there's something that triggers a behavior. That may be something as simple as the time of day. So it's 10 o'clock now, it's my first sort of cigarette break. So people then go out and obviously engage in unhealthy activities. And the reward is, I get that dopamine hit from smoking. There may be other cues within the environment that will pick up that. It may be, as I say, the time of day. It may be another individual. It may be a process that we go into. But ultimately, the cue will trigger a behavior. We get a reward for that behavior. And then the cycle is reinforced and repeated. And the reward doesn't always have to be material or a physical reward. It can be an emotional and a psychological reward, which in fact are the most powerful ones because they have the biggest impact on our behavior. So for example, when we smoke, when we engage in activities like that are unhealthy, like smoking, drinking, for example, it's often the dopamine hit that we get from engaging in those behaviors that we become addicted to, in addition to the actual chemicals we're consuming. So the dopamine is what we get, that pleasure, that sensation, that gratification. And obviously we then begin to learn that actually if I undo that behavior, if I perform that behavior, I get a reward at the end of it. So in the way of the workplace, then, things that we will see, some notes that I've made, for example, are a cue could be change. So we're told change is about to happen. So that is the cue, that's the trigger, and we get the behavior. And often the behaviors in relation to change are fear, anxiety. What does this mean for me? We will distance ourselves from change, or we may actually challenge that and become very aversive to that. And the rewards we will see is that actually we then get group cohesion, because when people are fearful, when change is going to happen, the group will often come together and decide actually what that means, and there'll be that solidarity within the group. So that is the reward we get, that commonality, that reward. It may even result in the avoidance of that change. Maybe that change is amended or adapted or stopped altogether. So we get that outcome that we want. It may be that there's a really disengaging, boring task that we have to do as part of our role. So that's the cue. I've got to do that task now. The behavior may be procrastination, and the reward is for a period of time, or maybe we avoid it altogether. We avoid having to go through that sort of, monotonous task. It may be that we are asked to collaborate. There's a team task working with others. And as we've said before, some people's learnt behavior may be, I don't really do too well in groups. So we get that cue of time to work together with others. The behavior is avoidance or distancing or making excuses of why we can't do a thing, why we can't be committed. And the reward to that person then is, again, they avoid having to be in that social situation that they find uncomfortable. And another one could be feedback. It's time for a one-to-one or an appraisal. And we're a person who views feedback as criticism, as something negative to be avoided. So the cue is, it's time for appraisals. The behavior is, again, I want to distance myself from that. I want to challenge it. I want to push back against that. And the reward is, again, we either avoid that feedback or we challenge that feedback, or again, psychologically, we try and challenge it and present some evidence against what we're being fed back to try and address that incongruence that's developed. So we're then reinforcing that we're right, we're okay, because I've convinced myself that I'm right. So I don't need to listen to that outside information, that outside influence. So again, we can probably appreciate these. We see these day to day in workplaces, and obviously the bigger and more complex an organization is, the more complex the behaviors that we see. So again, how can coaching help? Coaching is really effective because it is about challenge, and effective coaching should be challenging, because essentially what we're trying to do, if we commit to coaching, is say, I appreciate I have to do something different to get a different outcome. And again, Einstein said, didn't he, if we do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome, that's the definition of insanity. So by committing to coaching, we are saying we appreciate on some level we have to do something different. It's really hard because it does take time. Behavior doesn't change overnight, and it requires a level of commitment and appreciation that actually we've got all this automatic habitual behavior that actually we firstly need to become more aware of before we can do something different. So what coaching is really good at is, again, presenting that challenge and helping us to understand what are our core beliefs, what are our biases, why may have they developed in the first place, and what are those unconscious behaviors we perform in a particular situation. So again, very much of helping us identify those cues. What are the behaviors that happen, again, because of our deep-rooted beliefs within that situation, and how does that behavior reward us? And what we've got to then do is start to, when we've got that awareness, think of, okay, well, what can we do different? When that cue happens, we know that actually our perception of that is that's negative or that's pleasurable, but it may be pleasurable in the short term, but not in the long term. And then it's finding opportunities. So again, with the GROW model, for example, what are the opportunities then for us to do something different when we experience that situation? So rather than automatically engaging in a behavior that actually probably isn't working well for us at the moment, again, and it may have once worked, and that is really important as well. We develop behaviors that serve us well at a point in time, but as we grow and we evolve, behaviors that once served us may not serve us anymore. So it's really understanding that and then thinking, where are the opportunities for us to do something different? And that's what coaching is great at. It really, again, helping us go from that system one, fast, intuitive, and impulsive behavior to really putting that brake on and saying, okay, let me think about this a bit more. Let me challenge what I'm doing and look for opportunities to do something different. So we then to start to engage in the prefrontal cortex, the critical thinking part of the brain, which can then lead to change and can lead to new attitudes, new behaviors, and new ways of doing things, and ultimately new outcomes. And you may have heard of the concept of neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is really the study, the field of research that looks at the neurophysiology of the brain and how that changes dependent on the routines and habits we undertake. So ultimately, what happens is the evidence is very, very clear now that we can have structural changes in the brain right the way through our life, even into sort of elderly age, where depending on the habits and routines we perform day to day, we either reinforce what we call neural pathways, or they can actually break down and almost disconnect. So the image on the screen now is a neuron, and coming off that are the neural pathways, and we have what we call synapses that fit at the end of each neural pathway, and neurotransmitters transmit across those, send them messages. So that automatic fast system is essentially a physical neural pathway that sends messages that when we get a stimulus, a message is transmitted across that neural pathway, which leads to a belief, a behavior, an outcome, etc. By becoming more consciously aware of those, we start to undertake different behaviors. We then start to see a different outcome. And the research is very clear that actually, when we do something different, we start to build new neural pathways. We start to actually see physiological changes in the brain that make those new, more positive behaviors more automatic as we go through the repetitive habit of performing those behaviors. And as we do the behaviors we're trying to change less frequently, we actually unpick that neural pathway and start to remap the brain. And there's a concept called cortical remapping, where again we hear about your brain being remapped or rewired, and essentially we can do that. We can have a rewiring of the physical brain depending on the routine and the habit. Take a very simple example of learning how to juggle. What is happening when we learn how to juggle? There are so many subtle changes going on in the brain and the nervous system to coordinate that action, that we do get physiological changes in the brain and in the neurons to help us perform fine motor control. And the same happens with our behavior. When we raise our conscious awareness of behavior and we consciously start to do things differently, over time we rewire the brain so that those beneficial behaviors are more automatic. We perform them more often and get better outcomes. So essentially, coaching over time will help to support the rewiring of the brain to undertake better more favorable outcomes and behaviors, and essentially help us to achieve those goals that we may be finding difficult at the moment because of all that historical baggage that we've got that is holding us behind, because largely we're unaware of it and it's still unconscious. So there's some references there that will you can use to sort of read around this area a bit more, but that is a whistle-stop tour of the key concepts of what is going on psychologically when we see behavior, but also how coaching can support us within that. So hopefully that's been really useful, give you some wider context for the remainder of the talk today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kev. I mean,
You're
there's some
welcome.
really advanced sort of stuff in there, wasn't there? And you managed to do that really, really well. So thank you. Okay, colleagues, I hope everybody managed to get a little break there. And thanks so much to the presenters so far. So we are going to jump in because we are running a little bit behind time with Shirley doing some coaching practice. So I'm going to hand the floor over to Shirley if Shirley is back from a break.
I am here. Don't worry, not going to make it any later. Right, welcome back everybody. So what we're going to do now is get a little bit more practical, and we are going to look at the how to coach, and we're going to have a go at it as well. So I'm just going to share my screen briefly and just talk to you about some of the absolute basics of key coaching skills. So we're getting it really practical and basic. We need to build rapport, don't we, with our coachee, and demonstrate that unconditional positive regard, which has been mentioned a couple of times. We need to listen really effectively. We need to question. We need some sort of process or model to follow, but we need to be quite flexible with that, and we need to adapt to the individual. So coaching is quite a simple process. You saw it demonstrated when I did the live silent coaching, as we called it, session at the beginning. It's quite simple, but then to do it really well is a real art and a real skill, and you continue getting better at that the more you practice. And even people who've done tens of thousands of hours still need to practice. Now, what we're going to do is assume that you're all great at building rapport and demonstrating empathy, and you're great listeners. And we're going to dive specifically into the skills of questioning and have a go at it, and also flexibly using the GROW model, which I introduced to you at the beginning. So just a tiny reminder about questioning before we do our first activity related to it. I'm sure most of you, when you think about coaching and questioning, will kind of think, oh, well, we definitely need to ask lots of open questions as opposed to closed questions. And that's absolutely true. But it's a tiny little bit more complex than that, in that there are kind of lower order and higher order open questions. So for example, if I was to say to you, when did you do that coaching masterclass? Thursday morning. Who did you do it with? Helen. Where did you do it? On Zoom. It's not giving us a vast amount of information, even though it's more than a yes or a no or a closed answer. So the next level of Rudyard Kipling's 6 Honest Serving Men, that many of you will be familiar with, or what else do people call it? 6 bums on a rugby post, for all the W's and the H. The next layer is the one that's really, really important in coaching. So asking what or how. If I was to ask you, what did you get from that masterclass, or how did you find that masterclass? That would be a far more open question and give me more useful information than those on the bottom. So 90% of the time, I would go so far as to say, the questions that we ask in a coaching session start with potentially what or how. And on purpose, I've got why in the top of this pyramid. I've rounded the edge off, so it's not that spiky, but sometimes the question why can be perceived as a little bit spiky. You know, imagine that you're asking one of your direct reports, why did you do that? You know, they might think, oh, should I not have? And so quite often a why question can be reframed in a coaching situation as a what or a how, to soften it and help you come across as more neutral and curious, which is what we want in coaching. So you might say instead, what did you consider that led you to that decision? Or how did you come to make that decision? So we're going to do a little exercise in questioning, but I just want to reinforce to you, because you'll be getting copies of these slides, that the absolute best question starters generally, and we're going to actually give you questions to ask to make it easier, tend to start with what or how, as we've just looked at on that pyramid, and we also, to kind of change our language, tend to sprinkle in a few to what extent, you know, when we're probing a bit more, or we might use some of the classic interview questions, you know, tell me a bit more about your relationship with X, or explain a bit more about the context of this challenge or situation, or describe this in a bit more detail, those kind of questions. So that's what we're generally going to be doing. But as well as trying to have our questions open, there's something else which is really important in coaching, which I would now like you to explore. So what's going to happen is I am going to put you into pairs, and you need to decide who is A and who is B. And then when we do the second part of our practical exercise, roles are going to reverse. So in this part one, person A is the one that's going to bring a small problem, issue or challenge. Hopefully nothing too heavy, because we're not going to have loads of time, are we, Helen? Just something light. And then person B is going to ask person A 2 sets of questions. And those 2 sets of questions are going to be found on the web at this address, which I have put in the chat, but I'll go back in and put it in again in a second. Make sure it's at the bottom still. Now, we're not going to reverse roles for time, Helen. We're just going to do this one way round. So person B is going to ask person A the questions in order, whether they like them or not. They're just going to read them through, set A and then set B, and listen to the responses. And then the pair are going to chat about what was the difference between the 2 sets of questions, and all will be revealed when you come back. So I'll just make sure it's in the bottom of the chat, and I'll make sure that I've got actual pairs, because there is the odd person dropping off here and there. So there it is. It says Azesta / coaching question sets. So you need to click on there so that you've got access to those. And then I'm just going to check that I've got the perfect number of rooms to have 2 participants per room. Oh, we've had quite a few people not come back after the break. I've gone from 67 breakout rooms to, let's have a look.
I've noticed a lot of people are dropping off, maybe not feeling very comfortable about conversations, maybe. Who knows?
This is the best bit as well.
I know, I agree,
Right,
Shirley, I agree.
Right, let's have a look. So I'm just clicking down the number of breakout rooms until I get the perfect 2. There we go. So I'm going to give you, oh, then we got one more. Right, I'm going to give you 5 minutes or so to have a go at those 2 sets of questions, and then have a chat about the differences. And then we're going to have a look at the GROW model and practice using it. So on your marks, get set, go. Welcome back, everybody. So I hope that the vast majority of you managed to have a go at that exercise. I know definitely some did, because they finished and came back. Some of you might have been part way through. But please put in the chat for me what you decided was the difference between the 2 sets of questions. Because yes, the first set was a little bit more closed than the second set, but there was a bit more to it than that. Put in the chat what you think the difference was. Set 2 were a bit nicer or a bit more positive, some people said. Yeah, and the official definition, which we've definitely got close to in the chat, is that the first set are what's known as problem-focused questions, and the second set are what's known as solution-focused questions. And there are quite a few people saying more solution-based and things like that. And generally in coaching, and most of the questions that I did in the silent coaching were looking for more solution focused questions. However, there is a time sometimes for investigating the problem a little bit more, but that needs to be done gently, doesn't it, and carefully, and in the context of a good relationship. I think if you asked that first set of questions all in a row like you just did, it could come across a little bit like an inquisition, you know. So generally, some people using a combination and going a bit freestyle with the questions there. Yeah. So you're going to get a chance to do that now as we look at the GROW model. So just a quick reminder that we're going to be using, you know, a lot of open questions, a lot of solution focused questions, and these might be some of the starters, because when we have a go at a bit of coaching now with those same pairs, but potentially the other way around, we're going to be a bit more freestyle. We're going to be able, you know, to choose our own question at our own time. So what we're looking at now is having a little bit of practice with the GROW model. And in order to do that, just a very quick overview, it's exactly the model that I used in the silent coaching at the beginning. So we focused first of all on the goal, where somebody wants to get to. Then we focused a little bit on, well, what's going on now that's different from where we want to be, so that we could set up that gap between the two. And then we looked at what the possible options might be, got some feedback in the chat that, you know, it was quite useful, not just asking what are the options, but what else might you do, and what would you do if you had no constraints, and what would you do, what would your best friend do in this situation? Those kind of questions helped people to get broader with their options. And then what we tried to do was nail down what they were actually going to do. So that's the will part of the model. And I've already put these in the chat, but I'll do it again. You just see at the bottom of this slide a link to potential questions in all 4 of these areas. So let's just have a look in a little bit more detail at GROW, at the first part of GROW, which is goal setting first of all. And it's not always easy to start here. Sometimes people come to you with a problem, issue or challenge, and all they want to do is talk about the problem, and we need to try and get them out of this. But easier in a more formal coaching session, definitely to start with goal. And what we need to do is think about, what are we here to talk about? You know, so we agree the topic for discussion. And what we also try to do is agree a specific objective or focus of the session. Where do we want to get to by the end of the 10 minutes or 15 minutes or hour or 90 minutes that we've got? And we also might want to set a long-term aim if appropriate. You know, it might be, for example, that long-term, they want to be much more confident with their presentation skills, but by the end of the session, they want to at least have a plan for what they're going to do between now and Tuesday, you know, which is the next presentation that they're going to deliver. So that's what we're trying to do in this first goal section. And on the website, all of these questions just come from John Whitmore's Coaching for Performance. He was mentioned earlier in the definitions. Sir John Whitmore now, actually. He's the person that originally developed the GROW model and came up with some of these questions. So here's a few ideas. This is not like the last activity where we're just going to go through the questions, you know, verbatim, but these are ideas for the kinds of questions that you might want to ask when you're trying to get people a little bit clearer about their goals. So I asked you at the beginning, what are you trying to achieve? Imagine that you'd addressed your issue. What does success look like? What does it feel like? What do you really want? And here we've got a whole variety of other questions in that realm or field. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to get out of the conversation? Why is that important to you? A few examples. We've even got a hypothetical question in there, which can be really powerful in coaching. If I could grant you a wish for this situation, what would it be? So all sorts of different questions. questions that you could ask in that goal section of the conversation. Helen, just a cue to you. We were going to do the GROW model in 4 sections, but as we're a little bit behind time, I think it might be good to have a little 10-minute coach after we've looked at the whole model. Yeah. So just briefly bringing that goal section back. So the first part of your 10-minute conversation that you're going to have with your partner is going to be focused on the goal, and you will have those questions to help you. The second part, we're going to look at the reality. The underlying aims of coaching are always 2 key things: develop someone's self-awareness and develop their sense of self-responsibility. That's what we're always aiming for in coaching. And in this second part, what we're trying to do is give them a better understanding of where they're at now. We don't want them burying their head in the sand, pretending, there isn't a problem, or ignoring the goal that they want to reach. And we don't want them doing the opposite, getting things out of proportion and out of perspective. And by being, their coach or sounding board, we can help them get things better in perspective. So in this second section, we might be inviting self-assessment, we might be offering feedback, we might be helping them avoid or check assumptions. They might say, I did a presentation last week and it was a total nightmare. And then we say to them, a total nightmare? And they go, well, okay, some bits were okay, So we try and help them get better perspective. But what we're trying to do, which is really important, is help set up in their mind a difference between where they are now versus where they want to get to. Because the human mind, linking back to some of the things that Kev was talking about, doesn't like that gap. It doesn't like it when you've said to yourself, or you said even better to someone else, this is where I am now and this is where I want to be. And then when you've done that, your brain looks for all sorts of ways to close that gap because it doesn't like it. So it looks out for opportunities and helps people to make progress towards their goals, even when that's the only part of the model that you've looked at. So in this section, we can ask questions to understand more about where they are now. What's happening? Have they experienced anything similar to this? What have they tried so far? And we can challenge for accuracy. Sometimes when people describe the current situation, we see that they sometimes indulge in some flawed thinking, as a result of their past experiences. So they might say, for example, things like, I know she doesn't like me because she never responds to my emails, and we as the coach might say, that's interesting. Why else might she not be responding to your emails? So we can, in this section, try to help them have a better perspective and clearer, more logical, more rational thinking about where they're at. So once we've got a clear gap set up in their mind, they know what they're aiming for, they know they've got a good perspective of where they are at the moment, then we can help them start to think about closing that gap by considering all the options. So in this section, as I said earlier, quantity, not quality, we want to help them start to think, what are all the things they could possibly do to start moving from where they are to where they want to be? And we want to cover as full a range of options as possible. Ideally, we want all those suggestions coming from the coachee rather than coming from you, so that there's more engagement and buy-in to those. We can, preferably at the end, maybe offer suggestions carefully. We might say, oh, I've got a couple of ideas that you haven't thought of. Would you like to hear them? They'll usually say yes. And at the end of this section, we might start to think about some of the pros and cons of those options. But what's really important when people are coming up with ideas, this unconditional positive regard and curiosity, neutrality. You don't want to be, every time you like one of their ideas, doing a massive grin or saying, good, yes, and every time you don't like one, frowning at them. It needs to be very neutral, you know. Okay, so you could do this. Okay, what else? So here's some of the types of questions you could ask. What could you do? What options have you got? What else? This is a brilliant area for hypothetical questions, you know. If your best friend were in this situation, what advice would you give them? If you had absolutely no constraints, what would you do? Those kind of questions are really useful. And towards the end of this section, you might give a suggestion. You might start thinking about which options might most usefully move them towards their goal, or might give them the most satisfaction. And then finally, when we get to the will part of the coaching session, and it's named that for a number of reasons. It is about what will they actually do, what will be the first steps, but it's also about what is their level of will, what's their level of motivation for starting to move towards their goal. And in this section, we're really trying to help them commit to action, and we're trying to nail that down a little bit. So we're helping them choose from all the options what they'll actually implement. We're thinking about possible obstacles, what might get in the way, how might you sabotage this plan? And we're trying to make steps specific and define timing. We're not saying things like, how can you make that action smart? Because they'll probably want to slap you if you do. But we do want their actions to be smart. So we might, you know, ask them questions about, by when specifically will you do this? Or how specifically, and who might help you with this to agree support? So here's some of the suggested questions in this section. We're going to be thinking about what they might do, whether the actions that they're going to take are going to meet their original needs and move them towards their goal. We're thinking about support, about barriers, and we're also thinking about those levels of motivation or confidence. We might use some scaling. We might say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to taking this particular action? And if they say anything less than an 8, research shows that they're unlikely to do it. So if that were to happen, we might need to say, you know, what would need to be different for it to be higher? So we want to ask them some questions to ascertain, as well as what they will do, how is their level of will for undertaking those actions. So we've got a whole set of questions that I've just shared with you related to this, and the set of questions are also in the chat, but I'm just going to find them again and move it down to the bottom, and we're going to give you an opportunity with your partners the other way round to have a go at, here we go. Just got them again, to have a go at, hang on, I'm sending that just to one person. There we go. So in the bottom of the chat, to use those questions to help you try and structure a coaching session. How long are they allowed, do you think, Helen, for this? Trying to get back to time. 10 minutes?
10 minutes at maximum.
Okay.
I suppose I just need to alert people. We're probably going to run over by about 5 minutes. So if people are comfortable with that, happy with that, I'm certainly available. I know probably our presenters are available to sort of have another 5 minutes on the end of the session, if that's okay.
We might just need to have a look at the rooms, Shirley, because we've got quite a few where we've just got one person in them now. So if we just have a quick look and move people around.
Yeah, it's important, isn't it, that we keep people with the same partners where it's possible, because then we can reverse the other way around. So what I think we'll do is enable those people to get started, and in the background we will create you a new pairing if you haven't got one at the moment. So let's have a go with the grow model for 10 minutes. And then when you come back, you can put in the chat what your experience was like. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed having a bit of a go at coaching. I know you only had 10 minutes. You have got access to those questions whenever you want, for as long as you ever want. So if you ever do find yourself in a situation where a colleague, a friend, a family member could do with a little bit of coaching, you can use that question bank to try and help them. Please do put a comment in the chat as to how you found your coaching session. Maybe you want to praise your partner's amazing listening and questioning skills. Hopefully you got reasonably through all 4 stages of the model, but lots of other opportunities to practice. I'm going to pass back to Helen now so we can hear about a couple of case studies in organisations.
Right, Joe, just to thank all the presenters so far. It's been really, really insightful. I'm just learning loads myself, and, you know, I've been coaching a while, really. But yeah, so thanks so much, Shirley, for both your silent coaching and your coaching practice. It's been brilliant. And hopefully we'll get some feedback in the chat there. And thanks for Pam for doing the intro into coaching and mentoring and the definitions and what it's all about, which was brilliant. And then Kev, obviously the really advanced stuff, that trying to understand some of how the brain works. So you managed to do that in a really great way. So thanks so much for your input there. It's been great. What we're going to do, we haven't got time for questions, I'm afraid, because we are running a little bit behind. So what we're going to do is jump into what this could look like in an organisation and how we embed coaching into organisations. And we've got Therese and then obviously Julie, both from Cheshire, one from Cheshire East Council and then one from Stockport Council. So Therese, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Manna, I believe, is going to be sharing the slides for me. Thank you. We haven't practiced this, so let's hope teamwork will prevail here. Thank you very much for asking me to come along and share our journey with you. It's been an interesting exercise to actually look back at what we've done and go, do you know what? We haven't done too bad, actually. So I suppose where we started, I started looking at, you know, all the literature that's out there, and it all says that you need a clear strategy and commitment from your chief exec and the senior team to find a way to introduce and embed a coaching culture. So that theory is all well and good, but the reality is a very different picture. So Cheshire started in 2014 on a journey to embed that coaching culture where all managers adopted a coaching approach to their management style. 10 years later, 5 chief executives, several iterations of the senior leadership team, and I'd say we're still on that journey. So I just want to share some of the highs and lows with you. So in 2014, slide jumped on a bit. In 2014, with our strategy, a healthy budget and commitment from the top, we set out on our journey. We offered a 3-day EMCC accredited course for managers at foundation level, split over a period of 6 weeks, and a 1-day course for supervisors and team leaders in the fundamentals of coaching. And the first foundation course took place in April in 2014. Managers were enthusiastic and the feedback was really, really positive. In 2015, building on that success of the previous year and the energy that was being seen in the organisation, we decided to put on a conference. Very, very brave when I think about it now. And the theme of the conference was what is in your toolbox. And we had nearly 100 people came along to that. And we'd come across some coaching cards by a company called Barefoot Coaching. coaching cards for managers, coaching cards for teams. So we trialled them with a few managers, and as a little gift at the end of the coaching conference, we gave the pack of cards out to everyone who'd attended. And only a few weeks ago, a manager showed me their battered and tatty pack of cards that they still use now. So worth a look at if you're looking for a little something for somebody to do with coaching. The managers became very creative in how they use their cards, sometimes to help them find the right question for a difficult conversation, and at team meetings, giving them the chance to select a couple of cards for them to discuss. So an example of that is a manager who had a really difficult team, lots of issues going on. So he selected 3 questions from the cards and he put them on the team notice board and said that they would be discussing these questions, which had come from a company called Barefoot Coaching. And it seemed that the fact that the questions were not from him, that they'd been selected from a group of questions from somebody else, the team really bought into it. They worked in pairs to answer the 3 questions. And at the end of the session, actually asked, could they have a question each time they had a team meeting? So a really good way of getting teams to communicate. And from the managers that had completed their foundation level programme, we asked for volunteers to form part of a coaching pool. So several people volunteered and a coaching offer of support was made across the organisation. That offer was to managers and also to team members where maybe the manager was unable to offer the support for whatever reason that may be. We started to see towards the end of 2015 a bit of a change in the managers that were attending the foundation programme. The final assessment work, which was, I think it was 10 hours of coaching, was not being completed. And the reasons being given was that there was no time and I am too busy. So that caused us to think really what was happening, because how can you be too busy? We wanted coaching to become part of their day-to-day style, as well as that ability to offer a coaching session. We also realised that the first programmes in 2014 were probably attended by the people who genuinely really wanted to be a coach. And we're now working with the managers who were doing the course because they were expected to. Some managers were not able to translate their learning into the day-to-day situations. Coaching to them was at an agreed time in a room for a set period of time. But we did get really positive feedback from the one-day course that we were delivering. And people seemed to understand the basics and be able to translate that into their day-to-day work. So 2016, we decided, could we move on to the next slide, thanks. We'd have another coaching course and try and address the issue that we had. This time it was called Anytime, Any Place, Anywhere. And that encouraged people to have that coaching conversation in the corridor, maybe the coaching conversation when you meet someone in the kitchen, that few minutes that you can help somebody by just asking a few of the right questions. And that seemed to go really well. And I think people got the message from that. We started hearing managers saying they had to sit on their hands to stop them when they were trying to coach somebody. They just wanted to tell people what to do. All really positive that was happening there. And it was seen as a really good skill that managers were starting to really get day-to-day coaching into their daily management of their teams. So 2017 came along, and that was a really turbulent time for Cheshire East. We lost a lot of our funding for our coaching programme. We had serious issues within our senior management team and a need to rebuild a culture that had become quite poor. Given that this was happening, the coaching pool still continued to accept requests for coaching. So 2018 saw us start work with a consultancy firm called Sticky Change, and we developed a Brighter Future culture programme. And one of the main outputs of this programme was a whole theme around conversations. So we developed a conversation toolkit, which has about 20 conversations in it, starting from the most simple, how are you today, to the more challenging, where a manager and a team member have a one-to-one conversation, looking at 3 words about you and 3 words about me. Lots of trust needed for that conversation. The conversations were written in a coaching style. People liked them. I obviously liked them. We were bringing a coaching approach back to managers without them possibly realising. Due to our budget constraints, our small budget became even smaller. We went down the route of in-house short coaching training sessions, which went down really well and were oversubscribed. Then we came to 2020 to 22. Difficult 2 years for everybody, very different to anything we'd experienced before. We introduced coaching skills for everyone, coaching skills for manager as an e-learning course. And we slowly started to receive requests for coaching. But interestingly, we saw more requests for mentoring, which we hadn't really seen previously. So engaging with our heads of service and directors, we accommodated those mentoring requests. And I do wonder if the need for mentoring can be linked to the pandemic and how we were, or in some cases, we still are working now. So 2023 came along, things were looking a bit brighter. Time to reignite our coaching pool. If we just move the slide on a little bit. With an ask for anyone who may have joined the organisation in the past few years, would they like to come and join? Could they give that commitment to join our coaching pool? We had some money available for a CPD workshop for our coaches. Provider was found, and on the day that I was going to confirm everything, we got that dreaded email where the budget was frozen. No spending, no CPD, nothing. So feeling quite downhearted, but determined that we were going to start moving our coaching on. I contacted the coaching pool and we decided to do the workshop ourselves, pooling all our knowledge, all our different resources that we've got. And we held that in December with a great deal of energy. We've got some new people coming on board. They haven't been formally trained, but they have been coaching for a number of years, and we're going to develop them along with a buddying system from the current coaches that we've got in our coaching pool. So 2024, where are we now? Well, we started 2024 with a new chief executive, Rob Polkinghorne. We're looking to bring coaching into a new management development programme, which is being developed in-house because funds are, as for many local authorities, extremely tight. The focus for our coaching pool is on supporting managers due to the amount of change that the organisation will be going through over the coming months. And we've seen an increase in the past 2 months of requests coming through for that support. We're also looking to pilot reverse coaching this year in one of our directorates. And only Tuesday I was asked to develop some new conversations for managers to use with their teams, as we've got some tough messaging coming out over the coming weeks. I personally believe that coaching is back on the agenda at Cheshire East Council. We need it more than ever to support each other, whether it is in the formal coaching support by our coaching pool or the coaching approach adopted by our managers in team meetings, one-to-ones, chance encounters in the corridor, or, and quite importantly, in the virtual world where a lot of us are now working. Thank you, Manna, for driving the slides, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks so much, Therese. That was great. And it's great that you stuck with it. It's been a long journey, sounds like up and down, but you got there in the end. And it sounds like you've got a great leader at Cheshire East who supports it. So great for that. So can I ask Julie to come in from Stockport Council?
Yeah. So I will do a very abridged version because I'm very conscious of the time, but yes. A bit like what Therese was saying, we've had an up and down journey as well in coaching.
Julie, sorry to interrupt. Can people mute, please, when speakers are talking, so I can hear some feedback?
I think he needs to be more in the office. I'm out.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Keep going. Yeah, okay. So we've had an up and down journey as well. We started ours in 2008, so a little bit before Therese and Cheshire East. And we had a big commitment at that time, lots of money, lots of interest. We trained lots of managers, and we did that for about 6 years. And we're starting to see some changes in terms of style, if you like, you know, really sort of that push to using more of a coaching style within the organisation. And that was great until 2014, when there was a significant reduction in funding, and a lot of the people that had been responsible for looking after the coaching offer took redundancy and left the organisation. And so our offer was significantly reduced. I think the important thing to note is that we didn't stop, because we felt it was really important to still continue. But the coaching pool that we had, which was very large, was significantly reduced. And at one time, there were only a couple of us that were actually formally trained in offering coaching within the organisation. So, you know, a massive reduction. But as I say, we didn't stop. So we've always understood the importance of having some coaching offer formally, and also offering some training to our first line managers as well. If you want to click on to the next one. So currently we've got a much bigger pool of trained coaches, and that's really been fueled by the apprenticeship offer that is available now through the levy. And so since 2020, we've been training a lot more internal coaches, and we've got quite a nice pool of internal coaches now. And we still offer a one-day course to managers as well around using using coaching as a leadership style. The big thing that we've just started to invest in is level 7 coaching, executive coaching for our senior leaders. So that's a really exciting new addition, with the aim of offering it across the organisation, but also across the Northwest as well. And we did a really big push around coaching to make sure that people understood what it was about and what the benefits were about a year ago. And we've seen a really significant interest in coaching as a result of that really big push. We did it in lots and lots of different ways as part of our Leading Stockport programme. And as the person who looks after coaching, that was a little bit scary, if I'm honest, because I wasn't sure we would be able to deal with all of the interest, and we couldn't to start with. And so being very fortunate to have GM colleagues offer some coaching. I'm very cheeky, and I ask people if they will do some pro bono coaching for us. And so that's been really helpful at getting our waiting list down, because I didn't want us to be offering something and then people waiting for a really long time to have some formal coaching. So if we move on to the next one. I think the really big significant thing for me, though, in looking after the coaching scheme is the fact that we've got endorsement from our senior leadership team, and in particular from my head of service, Jenny, who is training to be an executive coach. So she just gets it. She understands what is going on with coaching and what the benefits of coaching are. So she's a massive advocate, and it's really, really helpful for me knowing that Jenny understands what's happening, and she's very interested in what we're doing. So if we move on from that. And then the last few things I wanted to share were some of the comments that we collect from the people who are being coached. And there's lots more. I just gave a little handful here about the impact it has on people's confidence, how it helps them realize their worth, not just in work, but across the whole of their lives. And the one that I love that I wanted to just sort of share was about this: I feel liberated, I'm like a bird, and I'm celebrating every day, and I'm so grateful. And that's all as a result of coaching, you know, and it felt like a treat. So yeah, benefits for the people that are being coached. And very quickly, we move on to the next one. I also asked our pool of coaches how they've benefited, and they love it. They love coaching. It's changed how they are as a person. Somebody's put here about it being one of the highlights of their life. It's just changed them, you know, so significantly. So it's not just the fact that they, you know, learn to be a coach. It has ripples in their own lives as well, which is amazing. And the last one I wanted to was just about the benefits of the organisation, and again ask people what they are. And it's about that commitment to the investment in the workforce, really, and enabling people to be able to be at their best in work so that they can enjoy their work and do good work, really. So I think I'll stop there because I'm realising it's time and people are needing to go. But I think for me, it's just about that celebration of the benefits, and they come in multiple places, really. Is that okay?
Julie, that was fantastic, and thank you for being so flexible and agile in your presentation. It was amazing. Thank you. And obviously we've run out of time. We've sped up at the end. But I think, both for you and Therese, you've been doing this on an organisational basis, and it's been really challenging, but you've stuck with it. So well done on coaching yourself through that sort of process as well. So brilliant to sort of hear that. I suppose what I'm going to say now is I just want to thank everybody, all the presenters, for giving a really insightful look into coaching and mentoring. I think it's been brilliant. I hope you feel you've had a bit of a taster session at the masterclass as well. Shirley and Pam have offered, if you are interested in pursuing coaching, like through a qualification, there are places available. So they will, do get in contact with us if you want to hear about that. But the things that I will walk away from this session is that weight mantra, which is, why am I talking? I say this to myself every day. So please, I hope that will help you tame your advice monster and start listening to people, because they've got their own solutions and resilience and can pretty much sort out their own issues and problems. We just need to enable them to do that. So thanks everybody for doing that. I hope you've enjoyed the session. I've got to, as the chair just mentioned, that obviously we've got an evaluation. We need to learn and get some feedback about the masterclasses. So please spend 1 or 2 minutes just filling out the evaluation form. That would be absolutely brilliant. And just to say, obviously, we're going to be sharing all the documentation, slide decks, the questions that for the silent coaching, that will be shared as well. And just to mention that the next masterclass is on the 18th of April in the morning, and it's about the outlook of the public sector. So I need to give that a bit of a plug as well. So thanks everybody for joining and hanging in there, and apologies that we overran by a few minutes, but it was great to see so many people on the call.